Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this informational meeting in regards to proposed charter government for Williams County. My name is Lou Hilker. I'm Vice President of the Williams County Board of Commissioners. This informational meeting has been organized because of questions being asked and letters received from various businesses, industries, and concerned citizens as to how a charter government will affect our county should it be passed by the voters within the county. Please note that the Board of Commissioners has and will remain mute on this topic because of the role required of the Board of Commissioners via the Ohio Revised Code. So we have and we will remain mute on this topic. The Board of Commissioners has invited Mr. John Lights, Esquire, and legal counsel with the County Commissioners Association of Ohio, which I will refer to as CCAO throughout this introduction. He will share his knowledge on charter governance.
That takes a minute.
CCAO represents all 88 counties within the state of Ohio, including 2 counties, Cuyahoga County and Summit County, of which currently have charter governments. Mr. Lights has served with CCAO for 19 years. He is a native of Ottawa County and earned his BA magna cum laude from Capital University and Juris Doctor from Capital Law School. He has served as mayor of Granville Heights for 8 years, served on city council for 6 years, was a member of the board of zoning appeals for 5 years, and planning commission for 10 years. How old are you?
I was Medicare eligible last month.
He's been a lobbyist for the Ohio Association, Township Association for over 20 years. He also worked in the Ohio Senate for 8 years. His current responsibilities with CCAO include serving as legislative advocacy in county services in law enforcement, courts and correction, other criminal justice issues, public safety, and joint committee on administration of elections. Mr. Lights will share with us how the ORC provides for charter government, what the advantages and disadvantages of a charter government is, and how the proposed charter government may affect Williams County in the future. Mr. Lights will entertain any questions you may have at the end of his presentation. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. John Lights. Thank you, John.
Yep. I was going to say there's choice seating available up front, but it is now all full. So thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I will try to quickly cover, in essence, what I want to talk about is what's the legal theory behind charter government and what exists in Ohio Constitution and Revised Code with respect to what it means to put a charter in place. We have 88 counties. There are 3 ways that you can organize a county government based on Ohio law. First one is a statutory form, which is basically established by the General Assembly in the Revised Code. 86 of the 88 counties are doing that. Second way is the alternative form, which is basically you change the composition of the county elected officers. No one else has done that. And then we have, as Lou said, 2 current charter governments in Cuyahoga County and in Summit County, both of which ironically evolved because of corruption with the local elected officials, and that was the county's response to removing those issues. Constitutionally, all this stuff has to find its foundation in the Constitution of the state of Ohio. So, for the statutory form of government, the Constitution says the General Assembly shall provide by general law for the organization and government of counties. So that basically the Constitution gives the power to the General Assembly to set up counties. That also includes, by the way, what counties are. The General Assembly can approve a change in county boundaries anytime they want, takes a unique vote, but basically everything to do with county government is determined by the General Assembly, including what powers that county government has. And there's a little concept called Dillon's Rule, which basically says that for county government and township government, if it ain't in the Revised Code, you can't do it. So basically you need to remember that a county government is primarily an administrative agency of the state. We like to talk about local government, and we like to think about school districts, townships, villages, cities, and counties. Townships and municipalities are true local governments. County government, all we get thrown in that category. County government is primarily the agent of the state. We're the entity in 88 different places that administers state policy that the legislature puts in place. So that's kind of what the unique role and perspective of county government is all about. So, General Assembly has the power through the Constitution to establish what counties look like and how they work. Then the General Assembly also is given the ability to provide for the alternate forms of county government. And as you see the footnote, that's Article 10, Section 1 of the Constitution. When we get down to the question of charters, where's the authority for the residents to even consider a charter? That's found in Article 10, Section 3 of the Constitution, where it says basically the people of any county may frame and adopt or amend a charter as provided in Article 3. What's the Constitution specifically say? As you note up front, people of any county may frame and adopt or amend a charter as provided in this article. But the right to initiative and referendum, which in essence the proposal of a county charter is, it's an initiated act by the residents of the county, is reserved to the people. So that clearly says you have the right to propose a charter government constitutionally. But what does it have to require? Every single charter shall provide, one, the form of government, how its officers shall be elected, and it shall provide for the exercise of all powers vested in, i.e. what the General Assembly lets you do, and the performance of all duties imposed upon the counties and county officers by law. By law suggests that this is an act of the General Assembly or the Ohio Revised Code. It's not constitutionally predicated. So that's what a charter must contain in its proposal. Again, quick review. What must be in any charter proposal? Form of government, how the officers will be elected, provision for the powers vested in the counties, and how they shall perform all those duties imposed by law. What may be in a charter? Again, Article 3 or Article 10, Section 3, reading further down. Any such charter may provide for the concurrent or exclusive exercise by the county in all or only parts of its area, or all or any designated powers vested by the Constitution or laws of Ohio in municipalities. It may provide for the organization of the county as a municipal corporation, i.e. think Indianapolis, Indiana. There's basically one unigov or whatever concept where it's run by a county-type entity. And it may provide for the succession by the county to the rights, properties, and obligations of the municipalities and townships. That's got to be in there because the concept of if all of a sudden you just destroy what you know as local government by eliminating townships and municipalities and putting all the power in a central county form of government, what do you do with all the stuff that those other entities had prior to the conversion to the county charter form of government? So that's why that's in there. And then you could also propose districts for administration or taxation or both. So those are the general things that may be in a charter. Again, the permissive charter provisions, not the mandatory ones. Concurrent or exclusive exercise of municipal powers, organization as a county government, organizing it as a municipal corporation, and concurrent or exclusive exercise of municipal powers to, again, as noted, pick up the rights or obligations of all of those political subdivisions you left behind as you formed the unity or the one county government. And then dividing into tax districts if you want, or assess other districts. If, and this is just kind of a little quirky thing, the municipal majority requirement. If you want to secede the local governments and have one unit government, one entity of the government, and basically assume the municipal powers, there's quirky procedures regarding how it has to be adopted. And you note here, it's got to be approved by a majority of the county, it's got to be approved by a majority of the residents in the largest municipality, and it also has to be approved by a majority of the folks outside of the municipality. And then a little other caveat, if there's less than 500,000 population, each majority of the combined totals of municipalities and townships in the county, which means everywhere you got to get a majority vote to add up to the total majority vote to put that type of proposal in place, or basically what you kind of call the unigovernment. Permissive charter provisions. So we've had constitutionally obligated provisions, mandatory provisions. We've had constitutionally optional provisions, permissive provisions. And now, what does the Ohio Revised Code or Ohio law allow you to have? Again, permissive authority. You can establish a civil service commission if you want, or you can have a Department of Health to administer public health services. Two permissive things that may be in a county charter. That's what you can have in a county charter proposal. Those are the enumerated options for a county charter proposal. Any questions right now? Might as well do it while you... Okay. Now, you got the idea if you want to do a charter. Now let's talk about the practical applications, the procedural ways of putting a county charter in place. You gather the petition. First of all, you have to circulate the petitions. It's got to have a full and complete copy of the proposed charter attached to each and every part petition. And you got all that done, and now you're ready to do something with it. You have two options. You can either file it with the Board of County Commissioners, or you may file it with the County Board of Elections. Slightly different timelines, but generally speaking, it's going to be the same process based on once you file it, the same process will take place. The most important thing here is you look to the Board of Elections. The Board of Elections has to do several things. First, they have to determine whether the petition and the signatures on the petition meet the requirements of law, including a certain specific section in Ohio election law under elections, which is 3501.38. That's important. Remember that section. We'll come back to that. Secondly, they have to report to the Board of County Commissioners whether or not the petition is valid. Remember that concept. Or invalid. And if invalid, the reasons for the invalidity. And third, then they have to report whether there are sufficient valid signatures and the number of invalid signatures. So they're looking to determine whether the Ohio Revised Code provisions regarding putting together and filing and processing a county charter provision have been met in the 3501.38. They are looking to whether or not the petition itself, its content, is a valid exercise of the initiative process or an invalid exercise of the initiative process. And then third, they're looking to see, hey, you got the right number of signatures required by law to give this petition the ability to go forward and be placed on the ballot. If the petition is found valid, the Board of Commissioners then certify the petition back to the Board of Elections. Basically, the county commissioners tell the Board of Elections, put this thing on the ballot for our voters. A county charter provision always appears on a general election ballot, so it would be a November election is when a vote would be held on any proposed county charter provision. Now we get into the fun stuff. What's the BOE, Board of Elections, have to do when they look at whether a county charter is valid or invalid? And this is your language of the key section of Ohio Revised Code, section 3501.38M. The Board of Elections is to determine, quote, whether the petition falls within the scope of the county's authority to enact via initiative, including whether the petition conforms to the requirements set forth in Section 3, Article 10 of the Ohio Constitution. Talked about that earlier. Including the exercise of only those powers that have been vested in and the performance of all duties imposed upon counties and county officers by law, i.e. the stuff the General Assembly tells you you can do, and whether the petition satisfies the statutory prerequisites to place the issue on the ballot, i.e. write signatures and all that kind of stuff. So that's the critical aspect that a Board of Elections will review to determine whether or not it's a valid petition with the valid signatures, tell the Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners basically says, okay, everything's been met, you can put it on up for a vote to the people in the next November election. How can a petition be found invalid? If it is found invalid, then what? the petitioners or that named committee on the petition have a couple options. They can go immediately to the Secretary of State's office. They can file a protest with the Board of Elections. The Board of Elections collects the protest information, sends it to the Secretary of State to review whether or not the Board of Elections decision was appropriate or inappropriate. If they don't meet the valid signature requirement, i.e. you needed 1,000 signatures but you had 992, and you had maybe 1,200 but 208 of them were no good, then you got the opportunity to go out and gather more signatures to get those 8 signatures you need, and you have 10 days to do that to meet your requirement. And if that basically perfects the petition, then you can move forward. Or the third option is file a direct action in the Court of Common Pleas for basically a declaratory judgment indicating that the petition is valid or invalid, and if it's valid, the Court of Common Pleas would order the petition to be placed on the ballot for a vote. So those are the 3 options to the petitioners if they come up short with signatures or if it's determined that the petition is not valid. Law dealing with validity of a county charter petition. The law was changed in 2016. In December of 2016, the General Assembly passed and put in, and of course, House Bill 463, December signifies end of the session, General Assembly, lame duck, do all kinds of stuff. So in a bill that you kind of call a Christmas tree bill with all kinds of weird stuff in it, they threw another provision, and that's how this provision got in. And basically what it does, it allows the Secretary of State and local boards of elections to determine, based upon their opinion of the content of the proposed charter, whether charter is valid or invalid. That includes the language in 3501.38M, which we just talked about. So there is the statutory legal authority to have the Board of Elections review content, make a judgment on it. If their judgment is it doesn't make it, they can turn the petition down for placing on the ballot. And then the petitioners, like I said, have those options. They can go to Court of Common Pleas, they can file a protest with the Secretary of State, or if they're just short signatures, they can go out and get more signatures. So again, this provision came about because of charter initiatives proposed in several counties and municipalities across Ohio that appeared to exceed the authority of the county or the municipality. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious, wasn't part of Ohio Revised Code this language that gave authority to the Board of Elections? Hasn't part of that been ruled unconstitutional?
It has not been ruled unconstitutional at this point. There has been a lawsuit filed, and it is currently pending in a court before the Ohio Supreme Court. And it's interesting to note that the Ohio Supreme Court has had 2 opportunities to touch it, and they've ran away from it. So there is a third case which is still on the docket, which the court hasn't even heard oral arguments on yet, where this question is specifically before the court. Is this an unconstitutional exercise of legislative authority? And it goes back to that first thing we showed you about the right of initiative and referendum are preserved for the public. Is this a direct infringement upon the public's right to initiative? In other words, initiate something before their government. And that is the whole constitutional challenge. So, and I think this might be the last slide, and we're getting right to where you're coming from. There are basically 4 things to note at this current time in history of Ohio about what's going on with proposed charters. First of all, and they all relate to putting that language into House Bill 463. The bill's provisions concerning local initiative petitions might be vulnerable to a challenge under the Ohio Constitution on 2 grounds. 1, it infringes on the right of initiative, and 2, it violates the separation of powers doctrine. Separation of powers says we got 3 branches of government, they each do their own thing. Well, the own thing of the courts is to decide what's legal, constitutional, and what isn't. The own thing of the General Assembly is to pass laws and stuff. Is the General Assembly kind of telling the court what the law is. So that's the whole concept of separation of powers document. Second point, while the Secretary of State or a Board of Elections has the authority to determine whether a petition meets the procedural requirements, I's dotted, T's crossed, the petition contain a full copy of the proposed charter amendment, did all the signers sign it and date it, and did the petition circulators certify, sign that they actually saw every signature being written down, all that kind of stuff. Procedural requirements to appear on the ballot. It's not clear whether the Constitution would allow the Secretary of State or the Board of Elections to reject a petition on the basis that it proposes a law that, if adopted, would be constitutional. And again, that's a comment towards the separation of powers document. The General Assembly can't tell the courts what's unconstitutional. That's the court's job. So that's one of the biggest arguments. Third point, a reviewing court might rule that the constitutional right of initiative includes the right to initiate a potentially unconstitutional statute. And this is kind of where in the legal stuff, you have to have a case or controversy to get an issue before a court. If you got something around floating out here that's this and whatever, but it's not been actually submitted to the voters, and the voters haven't actually said, yeah, we approve this, you ain't got nothing. It's just all floating out here. You don't have something to decide exactly what's being said until the public has adopted the proposed charter. Then you have something that a court can look at. But all this other stuff is pure preliminary. There's no case or controversy, so maybe nobody can do anything about that. Maybe you just process along and wait until you actually get a charter in place before the court's actually going to look at it. And then finally, a court could find that the bill violates the separation of powers doctrine by giving the Secretary of State or a Board of Elections the authority to decide the constitutionality of a proposed statute. So, while Williams County is talking about a potential proposed charter provision to put up for a vote, there's all this other stuff floating around out there that's going to impact the end result of what happens here if it does go to the ballot. So, and I think that was quick and dirty in a nutshell. So again, what are the takeaways? Takeaways, basically the Constitution and General Assembly decide what counties can do or can't do. There are 86 counties that are currently operating under the statutory form of government created by the General Assembly. The first option to basically alter the composition of the elected officials has never been used. And the third option, which is basically to propose a charter, has only been adopted in 2 counties. Next key point, what do you have to have? Certain key things you have to have in a proposed charter. There are certain things you may have in a proposed charter defined by the Constitution. And then the General Assembly has given you a couple other permissive options that you can have in a charter. If the scope of the charter provisions as proposed appear not to fall within that list, you're going to have some trouble in the end. And then finally, the whole question of the procedure, House Bill 463, and whether or not there is the ability of the legislative authority or the executive, in the case of the Board of Elections and Secretary of State, to prejudge the content of something before the content has actually been adopted and put in place. So, that's it in a nutshell. Everybody totally confused? All right, a lot of heads are shaking. We're going to close this down. All right, let's start with the questions. Go for it. Who's up first? Yes, sir.
You alluded to the fact that the Board of Elections presents this to the county commissioners. Do they have the ability to put the stop to it?
No. And again, this is a procedural aspect. You have to get into know your election law and understand that nothing can go on a ballot that impacts county government, including a lot of your property tax levies, unless the Board of Commissioners certifies it to the Board of Elections to put it on the ballot. So this is purely a procedural move. If the Board of Elections tells the commissioners, yeah, this looks pretty good, the commissioners are probably, they have to put it on. There is some wiggle room, however, though, in the one section of the revised code that says that the Board of Commissioners may have the ability to say, nah, this isn't valid. Although that interpretation probably has been overridden by the statutory change in 3501, 38M, or I don't remember numbers, whatever that section that was changed in House Bill 463, because that basically said it's a BOE question or a Secretary of State's question on basically a challenge filed by the petitioners if it's determined to be invalid. Yes, sir.
Is it your opinion then that this will probably be challenged if it were to pass based on the other ones not?
It's more than my opinion. I cannot imagine it not being challenged somehow, some way.
Would that mean then that the county had to defend against the lawsuit if it passed because it's their charter?
Well, that's interesting because is the charter in place or not in place at that point? Under the terms of the charter, the county would be responsible for covering litigation costs in some areas, but probably not in the defense of the validity of the petition. Somebody's going to have to file it. Somebody somewhere will find the wherewithal to pay for those fees. But the county is not on the line. No, not on that question. Yes?
To what extent, of the two charter counties, how much litigation have they endured because they went to being charter counties? And I don't just mean because they're a charter county, I mean because they've made decisions that maybe exceeded their authority, or just, it seems like more uncertainty for those counties.
Summit County really didn't have an issue. Cuyahoga County has had a couple issues. One judge sued them because they changed some things around and they lost that suit. It had to do with abolishing the office. And it says now that office is not statutorily required, it could be abolished. And then it's really interesting, right now, it hasn't happened yet, but there's probably going to be a challenge. Cuyahoga County passed a ban the plastic bag bill, or ordinance, or resolution last week. There's also another city, the city of Bexley has done the same thing. General Assembly isn't happy about that. And so you probably will see a challenge to Cuyahoga's authority to pass a bag ban. And that gets into the whole issue of where are they deriving the power. The discussion about if you take municipal corporate powers and give it to the county, there's a little thing called municipal home rule. Municipal home rule basically says that the municipality can do whatever they want as long as they don't get into area that's been specifically reserved for state regulation, and that's where this challenge might come in. You look at, a lot of people look at municipal charters and say home rule, oh, I got home rule, I can do whatever I want. No, you don't. You have the ability to deal with the health, safety, and welfare of the public, or what's commonly known as the police powers. You can pretty much go anywhere you want in the area of the police powers, health, safety, welfare, as a home rule municipality. And again, you just don't get that authority. Home rule only comes through adoption of a municipal charter. You don't have it in general statutory law. You can elect it. And so there's that kind of concept of where are the home rule powers and do you actually get home rule powers? And it's pretty clear, there's been plenty of case law that suggests that, and again, it's specifically for the county, going back to that you only have those powers which are specifically vested in you by the General Assembly, and that's constitutional. Any of these areas where the state has already stepped in and developed a statewide regulatory scheme, this goes to the fracking issue. That was the big one. A bunch of these charters and stuff try to say, you can't frack. We're going to, can't do that. That the state has already determined that is an issue of statewide purport, and it has already established a statewide regulatory scheme under its authority as a sovereign state to deal with that question ubiquitously statewide. So you got a lot of this gets into what do you want to do and what don't you want to do. Also, whoops. Yes, sir.
What's the difference between the state having authority on fracking, but it doesn't have authority over the water rights?
I didn't say that, did I?
No, one, the state has authority over fracking, or the local authority doesn't, correct?
That has been ruled by the Supreme Court to be the case, yes.
Right. But it's different to our water level, our drinking water, the aquifer, it's different.
That is a different set of facts, but it's probably the same legal premise. It just hasn't been litigated. There will be the argument made that the aquifer issue and water issue, quite frankly, groundwater is regulated by the state, by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and also by the Ohio EPA. That is the argument that will be made. But it's not been litigated and tested, and just like she pointed out earlier, the whole question of can the Board of Elections or the Secretary of State look at the content and decide yes or no? Those are legal questions, which are clearly legal questions, but haven't been definitively litigated yet. Go ahead.
Charter goes through, and then it goes to the courts.
Yeah?
The charter could lose their authority over the aquifer if we go back to the state, correct? If it went to the court, it was challenged.
The Supreme Court very easily could rule that way, yes. Yeah. I don't want to speak for the court, but I am sure that argument will be pushed, quite significantly. And I think, quite frankly, in light of the decision on fracking, and while it's not exactly factually the same, theoretically, it's the same. Yeah. Yes, sir.
How far has the litigation gone in regards to the powers of nature, or the rights of nature? And it seems like the way it's described in the proposal is unlimited, because it includes everything, the ecosystem, and it also looks like the charter would preempt even existing state and federal laws if it's deemed by the community to be necessary for the health and safety of the community.
What did I just tell you about its ability to preempt ubiquitous statewide regulatory scheme? Can't happen. Probably loses in court.
You said this would probably be challenged. Who's likely to challenge it?
Oh, a multitude of people.
Names on it.
Probably the Chamber of Commerce right out of the bat. Probably all the regulated industries. I'm sure there would be a plethora of proponents to challenge that litigation, plaintiffs.
Would the state itself have an interest in that? Like, if you're the Ohio EPA and you have this authority taken away from you, would you have standing at that point?
What do you think?
I think yes. But
Oh, yeah.
I don't know the likelihood of that.
Oh, no, oh, yeah. The state would be it as a
So basically,
probably, yeah.
I mean, to sum that up,
The state would probably be the one that'd file the litigation, I'd bet.
to get the power back.
Yeah.
I mean, to simplify.
Well, they have a decision on what it has the ability to do. And the fact that the Supreme Court has already historically said, and it's kind of funny because one of the suburban communities over on the towards the east, I don't know how many, and this is at municipal level, there's been a municipal challenge on the ballot 7 times to regulate or ban fracking, and it's passed a couple of those times. And after it passed the first time, it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, "No," and it's passed again, and the Supreme Court had to say, "What did we already tell you once?" So, yeah, the success on something like this, in my opinion, is not really good. Yes, sir.
So the cost of this, stepping away from the argument of going to court every time you turn around, listen, are the daily costs, because every time I put something on the ballot, I have to go through this procedure, and the daily running of the county, because every Tom, Dick, and Harry can figure out, I want to
put something through, and I got a signature, so now you're running, the Board of Elections crazy, because you're gonna have to put more people on it. Looks to me like you're running the cost of running the county up, not to mention litigation.
Yeah? I have to be careful. Yes, sir.
Isn't that also sort of a cost of democracy? Do you have a right to try to initiate?
Yeah.
You kind of do those sorts of things. But my question is, something like the charter that's being circulated here in Williams County, courts have a responsibility, if a challenge is brought to them, to not simply blow it over with a bulldozer. They have a responsibility, don't they, to see if there are parts of it that are salvageable and remain legal no matter what?
Not necessarily, because they could determine that there was such an overriding emphasis on one thing that some of the little details got lost, and that maybe theoretically the voters really didn't know what the. That's a good question.
It's called severability, isn't it?
It is called severability. Whoops. Oh, I'll just leave it down there. And just because there's a severability clause, it doesn't mean the severability clause prevails. There have been times where a severability clause, nah, we're not keeping that in there. But again, it's a legal question that ultimately is decided by the Ohio Supreme Court.
Do I sort of understand, right, the basic difference between the charter and the statutory is that with a charter, you have the right to legislate, essentially, right, to make law, whereas typically the county commissioners don't make law. Is that a reasonable assessment?
No. Okay. And that's really splitting hairs. Given Ohio law and the fact that counties are an entity, created by the General Assembly and are limited solely to work within the powers that have been expressly delegated to them by the General Assembly, they adopt resolutions. You'll note that municipalities will adopt an ordinance. Counties adopt resolutions. And basically the resolutions set policy, or I suppose you could say law, within the confines of the authority given to them. The concept of adopting a law, I think you could look at it and say it's really independent authority to exercise independent judgment and do something you want to do without, other oversight. So it's really kind of splitting hairs. Now, if you get into the home rule concept, they'll argue, that's where you really get into how far can you go, how far can't you go. The classic example of challenging municipal home rule right now is the red light cameras in the big cities. And the General Assembly went nuts with that and adopted some provisions regarding that. And now that right now is in the Supreme Court over whether or not municipal governments can basically create their own offense of running a red light camera and basically assessing a civil fine against you to do that and all that process. So that's the current hot button issue regarding municipal home rule authority.
Wasn't there an analogous one a few years ago with firearms law, that you had cities passing their own more restrictive firearms laws?
Yeah.
This would have been the previous hotspot.
Same concept. State put a statewide scheme in, regulatory scheme in for that. Yes, sir.
When you change from a statutory form of government to a charter, you replace the statutory with the charter, correct? You're no longer under this set of rules, you're under the set of rules that you defined in the charter?
No. You have the obligation to perform all the functions that have been imposed on you or granted to you by the General Assembly. It's just a different method for exercising the authority that you're obligated to perform. County recorder has a function. You can't just change those. Sheriff has a function. Can't just change what the sheriff does. You can't decide you're not going to be in the jail business. Sorry, that's what a sheriff does, part of what they do. So every single responsibility that the state has given to the county government to perform, coroner's function, You know, if you redo, I like to look at a charter as really you're just restructuring the way you do things. You're not changing what you can do or can't do, but you're changing the way you're going to get the job done.
They all have to be addressed if you're gonna change that function in the charter from how you're gonna do it differently than in the statute.
Yes. You can't put a proposal together that ignores the county coroner functions. You can't put a proposal together that ignores the jail, the sheriff's responsibility to house prisoners for the court, that kind of stuff. So if it's in the revised code and you're obligated to do it, you have to address how you're going to do that in a proposed charter.
The way I see it, then, the only way we don't have any regulations on the book, on the state, on not. The only thing, like I say, the Great Lakes, they finally come up and said, you can do this with the Great Lakes, but right now, the aquifer isn't. What you're saying is, the only way we're gonna get maybe our assembly or Columbus to talk about this subject is to get the charter, to get something for them to say, we've got to come and get a decision on it. If we don't get some kind of legal, document or something, they aren't gonna talk about it.
Oh, I think they are talking about it, but
Well, I mean, but like you say, this comes to this thing out of nowhere, and they could quit talking about it tomorrow without something on it that they have to.
well, but you, okay, and I'm kind of a little devil. You have to have something that is,
A charter.
well, that is a valid charter. So you pass this and you litigate it. So you don't have anything until you finish the litigation. And you're already probably operating from not a real position of strength on some of these questions because of previous case law on what a charter can do and what a charter can't do.
Without that charter to litigate, they could quit talking tomorrow. Or today even, without something that has to be addressed. And like you say, until they get something on the book, it's out here. And so, at what point do we have something to litigate? Because right now, anybody could come in and I've had to throw around, what about a watering, bottling? Guy come in and said, well, we're gonna do it. Because right now, what we see, if my figures is right, we use 75 million gallons a day for 400,000 people. This gentleman wants 19% to 75, and my gut tells me that ain't their bottom line. That's between 15 and 20% in one area, what the whole 400,000 people uses. And we don't have anything to regulate, we don't even have anything to have somebody discuss it. What do we get, how do we get them down there to say, hey, what do we do?
You know, I'll make an argument that the Ohio EPA has some groundwater regulatory schemes. You just might not be triggered into it yet. Well, again, it's just like you don't have a charter until you have a charter, and you got to get to a charter. It's the same thing here, case or controversy. You're not there yet. They're not going forward with the licensing process for the well. There hasn't been a discussion about you're going to drop other wells. And you got the ultimate issue of, and City of Toledo, this is all about, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut to the chase. This is all about somebody wanting to sell water to the suburbs of Lucas County because they think those suburbs are going to walk away from the City of Toledo's water supply. Yeah.
Question about the charter, respecting other charters. In other words, the county charter that in the transition, respect the township charter, and the other cities. They would honor those charters that are already in effect. Now, as I understand it, that means that they won't overrule, the county won't overrule a town or the township if they have zoning law and so forth. Is that my correct interpretation of that?
First of all, there is no such thing as township charter. Townships are just like counties. They are creatures of statute. Everything they can do or can't do is provided by the General Assembly. The difference with counties is that there is a constitutional option to choose a charter if you would like to choose one. But basically, township government and municipal and county government are creatures of statute. Municipal government have charters, but again, generally, those charters are put in place to exercise their home rule authority to a greater extent than is currently provided in the revised code, and to establish their structure of government. Basically, a village government, 6 council members and a mayor. The mayor only votes in case of a tie. That's village government in the state. If you don't want to do that, you got to put a charter in place. And a lot of them do, and you'll either end up with a strong mayor form of government, where they'll change the composition of the council. They'll give you a mayor, and they'll give you however many council members. In some instances, they'll elect them, village or citywide. Other instances, they'll elect them in districts. So that's kind of what's going on. There's a key distinction there. Yeah.
Follow up on that. I live in a township, when I bought the property, I bought those property rights with it. It was a basic, I don't always understood private property rights, individual. And we never gave up those rights to our township in zoning laws. So theoretically, I own.
Not to the property right, but zoning legitimately can restrict the use of those rights.
Okay, so we never gave those up. Could a charter government impose the land restriction use onto me as an individual? Or haven't given up anything in my zoning?
You're talking as a township resident, where there's township zoning in place.
Yes. Basically, outside of the towns, yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a question for litigation. I can see the argument where county charter provision, if they do that municipal thing and they get the home rule power and they can do some of that stuff. But you also have to remember that under Ohio law, counties do not have local zoning regulatory authority. There are 2 ways to do zoning in Ohio. There's county rural zoning, where they petition township by township to basically say, we want to have zoning, and we're going to have the county administer the zoning for us. And so you have 5 townships that want to do zoning, and they don't even have to be next to each other, but 5 townships in the county that want to do zoning. They put it on the ballot in each township, and each of those 5 townships, the majority of the residents say, yep, we want zoning. And we want county rural zoning, and that means we're going to set up the administration of that zoning through the county government, and you're going to have a county board of zoning appeals, county, that kind of stuff. If they put it up, say 6 counties vote on it, and one of the counties say, we don't want this crap. Those 5 counties will do it, and the 6th county is left to the side. Or the second way is individual, township by township by township. Each township puts it on the ballot. Each township passes it separately, and each township by themselves regulates the zoning that they put in place through their zoning commission and their board of zoning appeals by just those folks in that township. Those are the 2 ways you do zoning. There is no general county government zoning provision.
We have ag districts that now have
State law.
state law.
State law.
And that couldn't be overruled then by a charter government at the county level.
Probably not. Yes.
I've read the charter proposals here, and I own a company here in Bryan, and frankly, it scares me a little bit, because it seems like they're proposing kind of a Williams County EPA. And I'm not a big user of water or anything like that, but it just seems, it worries me for my own, that somebody could come in and say, we don't like what you're doing, stop what you're doing. And it seems like it could be a real pull for economic development in the county, because if I'm reading the thing right, it introduces a lot of power to 3 people. Am I unnecessarily worried?
Not at all.
Not at all.
We haven't seen one of these adopted anywhere else in the state, and they've tried a bunch of times, and they haven't been successful. Some have been over pipelines, some have been over fracking, but it seems like all of these provisions end up over some type of environmental concern. Yes?
Charter government, eliminate the office of county commissioner.
Charter government? No, the charter has to specify how the functions of that office are going to be performed.
So that they tell what they determine what the county commissioners can and can't do.
No, the county commissioners are given specific obligations under the revised code. All you do is tell what group of people how they're going to do it, whether you call them commissioners or whatever, and assign that function to them. See what I'm saying? All right, okay, we'll try that again. All right. Commissioners have certain functions to perform in the revised code. They're called commissioners, 3-member board. You could decide that we want 12 people called cool dudes assigned to perform these functions. And you could say that the 12 cool dudes, 9 of the 12 cool dudes have to go along before they exercise any of the authority given to them. That's what you do in a charter form of government. That's how you would regulate. And that goes back to the concept of municipal charters. Strong mayor. I got a mayor who runs the show and a bunch of council members. Oh no, I've decided I'm going to have a city manager form of government. We hire a person who does the administrative side for us, and we have a council that's the council president basically performs the ceremonial duties of mayor and maybe may preside over mayor's court in that municipal corporation. So it's all about structure and not really about content. You got to do X. I don't care how you do it. The charter lets you decide how you want to do X, but you're going to do X one way or another. Yes, sir.
I have a question. With our county, the population is so small. If we had 5, 10, 15 million people living here, they'd listen to us in Columbia. Politicians don't give a hoot about Williams County because we're so small. If they had to live here in the factory farm, the smell of the odor and everything, they wouldn't do that in their city. Why should they be able, one person or a company come in and want to sell our water outside of our area and make a fortune off of it? Why do we have to accept that? If we have this amendment for this self-governing thing, wouldn't that outlaw them being able, like, what's the name of that bottling company? Nestle's, they couldn't come in and put 100 million bottles a day out of our aquifer, and Gibson couldn't sell our water to Toledo, who doesn't need it, because they have Lake Erie and the possibilities of filtering it and making it okay, but all these places are getting greedy. They want to get it cheaper, and they think they'll get it cheaper from us, and it is probably better water. So why should we give up our water?
It's the best water, isn't it?
I mean, we ought to have the right to stop this.
Not so sure this gets that done for you.
There should be something.
Yes, sir.
One of the problems that's floating around the area right now, and I heard it just the other day, people are afraid if this gets passed, then all of a sudden the charter is going to be able to do things all the way down to kind of trim the leaves off my tree, okay? Can I cut the limbs out of that tree? Can I dig a hole in my backyard, okay? That a charter like this is going to be that repressive if it goes through. Any opinions on that?
Because of the breadth of environmental issues expressed in the document as I've read it, I would not suggest that that is way out of line and outlandish, although I'm not going to say that's what would happen or could happen, but yeah. See, there's a whole bunch of other stuff floating
How
around.
would that go about? I mean, you still have a county commission, you still have the county commissioners.
Mhm.
You still have a basic, from what I'm understanding, of the basic form of government that we've always had. We've now become a charter. I mean, the city of Bryan's a charter city. Montpelier's a charter city. Defiance is a charter city, all right? Nobody's come around to somebody in the city of Bryan and said, you know, you can't trim that tree.
You also have to look at the provisions of that charter, and I can guarantee you all those charters are silent with anything, a lot of the stuff in here. They don't, so, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
The interesting thing though is, we always seem to take the worst case scenario when you look at this language. And the charter is giving the people in the county the ability to have some control over what their community is like. And there also is wording in the Ohio Constitution that says all political power is in the people. You probably know that section, and we have the right to alter, amend, abolish, and it's for our equal benefit and protection. And yet we find ourselves, how is it if the power is in all of us, how is it that we find ourselves in this box where something like this that is clearly threatening, and I don't care if you're a business person or not, this is not good for our community, but we are like helpless. And how is it this government got created, and we're all pretty aware that there are very powerful special interest groups at the state level, that if we think there's a few greedy people in our county that want to exploit the water resources here, you can only imagine what it's like down in Columbus. So, I mean, being realistic of saying that these people in Williams County, of which I think a majority are opposed to this type of action, could ever begin to collect the hundreds of thousands of signatures to amend the Ohio Constitution. There's just an irony that I wish people could read that language. It's under the Bill of Rights in the Ohio Constitution that all political power is in us, but yet we've wrote ourselves out of the decision-making process altogether.
Well, the sovereign power of the state is vested in the people, and the Constitution is a document adopted by the people to tell them how they're going to govern themselves. You want to amend the Constitution, go for it. There are limitations on how you got to have a certain amount of signatures from 44 of the 88 counties and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you just can't walk in and do that. But again, the whole the concept of that, the power is derived from the people did establish the Constitution of the state of Ohio. So that is that is the document they have chosen. So, Yes, sir.
My question goes along with hers. It says, we the people. How do you determine who the we is? All I can see is 20 people of we. Did you have any county community meetings to come up with this language? Who determines the language on it?
Everybody in the county that's a registered voter will get the vote. If it gets on the ballot, it gets the vote on it.
That's the language on the ballot. How did you create the language on the ballot? Did you have community meetings?
We met with people, a couple people from the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund. We've been in our community meetings, and I've been very
Pennsylvania.
open about this and told you. And they asked us, what are our concerns? And we explained to them, and we provided them with resolutions that were passed by the local governments and also the county commissioners in opposition. And that's what the foundation of the charter is.
So you talked to
So
the
they-
sheriff
we did
department,
not
all the
know-
departments? You
Pardon
talked to the Amish, you talked to a lot of community members?
They
You
had,
just
we
picked-
had 5 community meetings. They were more than welcome to
You
come to.
already had the language
Right.
established.
Right, the Constitution allows a group of people in the county to write a charter, gather signatures, and put it on the ballot. No one is forcing this on them.
The we, the people, did the right charter. A certain group of people wrote the charter.
And you have the ability to vote on it.
If they get the signatures and get it on the ballot, you have the ability to vote for it. Yes, ma'am.
When it boils down to it, even if the charter does, will it be able to stop the growth? No. And I think that's the question that everybody needs to listen to and have the answer.
The Supreme Court of Ohio will answer that question for you. It will obviously be litigated, and the current precedent out there on not necessarily the same set of facts, but on policy and theory suggests that you probably won't prevail on that question.
So it doesn't matter. This isn't
Supreme Court will tell you that. I can't tell you that.
Is there an exit strategy for something we get into? Because they don't want
It will send it to the Supreme Court.
But they're two different issues, and I think that's what everybody needs to understand. The charter government and the drilling are completely separate.
No, they're not.
Well, there's another legal issue which we haven't touched upon, and that's the question of the ability to petition a court system. And that ability lies in an individual. And there has been no case law anywhere that I know of that suggests an ecosystem or whatever is a person or can pull, or a person can take. So that's a huge, huge question, and whether or not an individual can even do that. Yeah?
But I think you have to look at the history of this country.
Well,
I couldn't have voted 100 years ago,
Yeah.
so if I said, let's not ever challenge existing law to see if we can change the law because it isn't good law, then where would?
well, that's historically English British common law and the concept, and that's why corporations are given specific status as a person to allow them to sue and be sued. There currently is no authority that suggests an ecosystem can sue anybody or be sued by anybody.
But a corporation didn't have that authority for a long time. It wasn't in the Constitution.
They were given that authority by the General Assembly to recognize them as a citizen, or recognize them as an individual, not as a citizen. Yes, ma'am.
To expound on what she was saying, so not about locally here within Williams County, but if we have a charter government, do we have jurisdiction over any other county or state? Does it do any good if there's not drilling in our county? Does it do any good? We have no oversight.
No, it's within the current political subdivision boundaries of Williams County. If the General Assembly would like to wipe out Williams County,
Correct. But I've been in meetings, that's what is being said.
That's what I was trying to.
that is, no. I mean, this,
Unless the court rules that, does not rule that an ecosystem cannot, an ecosystem can be protected and an ecosystem can have standing in court, and then it would.
no. You can't exercise authority outside the boundaries of Williams County, period. You don't have that ability.
Originally, Fulton County and Defiance County was Williams County until the 1830s when the state legislature
Split them? Yeah, that's how we ended up with Geauga being or Lake County being the smallest county, because they split Lake off of Geauga. Lake was Geauga County. Yeah, there was a bunch of that done as the, the state developed, historically.
How much would it cost the county if this had to go through all this litigation with this?
It's not county money it's not the county's obligation to challenge it, to pay for the cost of the challenge. It'll be done by some third party. Now, if the charter goes into effect, there are specific things where it says county has to cover all the costs.
Right. And how much is that?
I don't know. It's litigation costs. Who knows?
Or if the Board of Elections, went by, 350138 and said it was invalid, someone protested that, would the county have to defend that?
That the county would defend the county would defend the Board of Elections as a county entity in that challenge before the courts. Yes.
And then if the charter is passed, every litigation, every business owner, every property owner that tries to challenge whatever those commissioners might try to do, now the county's on the hook for defending that litigation.
I understand. Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I understand it says if you get in the ecological systems realm, anything, yeah, the county has to pay for all that stuff. Yeah, any challenge to that. Yes, sir.
When a county goes to like a charter government, does the state or can the state come in and regulate funding they give to the county, to the township? Actually reduce it because they are a charter, not really part of the,
No.
like,
Well, because they are a statutorily created entity of the Ohio General Assembly, and you cannot discriminate against them as far as whatever. Now you can come up. Now you can come up with. It depends what kind of money you're talking about, because what they're doing with respect to the red light cameras is there's a provision floating around right now that says, okay, and if you go to red light cameras, all the money you get in red light camera fine revenue, that chunk is taken away from your county undivided local government funding. But again, that's not picking on a county. That's saying if you choose to do this, regardless of where you are, that's the penalty you pay. That's a statewide ubiquitous regulation statute. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, under the charter form of government, are there still elected officials, or who chooses, like, who's gonna oversee all this?
The one mandatory thing that has to be in the charter, how you're going to establish the officers. Cuyahoga County has an elected prosecutor, but all of the other county elected officials, except for the county council and the county executive, are appointed by the county executive, confirmed by the county council. But the functions have to be performed.
In the Williams County Charter, all of the government, local county government remains unchanged.
You're getting rid of the coroner, aren't you?
No, no.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know, but it says you have to change the current offices and responsibilities. This might not actually be doing that. I don't have a value judgment or opinion on that, but that's one of the things you have to do. You have to establish a different form of government. And down in Athens County, they basically said, and all the county elected officials stay the same, and they go, no, that doesn't meet muster for one of the mandatory provisions of a county charter.
The coroner is the reverse, it's either elected or appointed, whichever it was split. Is that one?
That might preserve that issue, or somebody could say, nah, that's not really nearly enough to, I don't know.
But why, I guess it's just a requirement that it has to be just.
It's not a requirement, it's a constitutional obligation.
Well, I'm just thinking that when a municipality can't just become chartered and leave its structure the way it is, but just to gain some authority or some ability that more tailor needs to the community, it has to alter part of its structure.
The theory behind municipal charter government is really primarily about how you're going to do things. That's really what a municipal charter is all about. We're going to have a strong mayor, weak council. We're going to have a strong council. We're going to have, a county, or we're going to have a city manager. It's municipal charter government is really all about how they're going to do what they need to do. And it doesn't really get it. Well, again, it can't, because Constitution limits what your authority is, and the Constitution's empowered the General Assembly to say this is the stuff you can do and can't do, but it's also said in the explicit situation of municipalities, but you can have home rule authority, or you do have home rule authority, and that allows you leeway in regulating basically the police powers, the health, safety, welfare function. That's not everything you can do, but it's designed to do, the police powers. Classic example of that is you go to Bryan and you get a speeding ticket, and you get cited under Bryan City Ordinance blah 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 instead of Ohio Revised Code whatever. That is a charter provision. You have the ability under home rule, or not charter provision. You have the ability under home rule to adopt a parallel system of misdemeanor criminal offenses, as long as the penalty for the similar offense isn't egregiously excessive. So you've got some regulation on that. So you can't have speed 10 miles over the speed limit and you're going to give them $500 when the state's only like 100, 200. So it's getting in a whole structure of government.
Wouldn't the charter system also make it possible
For what? I mean, you're not going to come to the county to switch the way around the township does it. And again,
I believe statutorily, it's obligatory. When there's a county charter is passed, the unincorporated parts of the county who are governed by the now legislative,
if that's the way you choose to go, yeah, and yeah.
and thus they have referendum and initiative rights.
Well, but only with respect to what that county government is proposing to do. And that would have to trigger that the county takes over running everything. You go to basically that one option where you may propose a charter where basically the county adopts municipal powers and everything is consolidated, the Indianapolis example. Otherwise, you got township zoning and you got a county charter, and no, you know, township zoning is still in place. Legitimate functioning power of a township government. Get that? Okay? Well, it depends to what extent, how far you go with the charter.
Well, if the county commissioners or their equivalent, if you create a local legislature at the county level, the way the statutory, I believe the statute is not for this, say that the unincorporated parts of the county, which at the present time do not have a referendum or initiative right on any issue, they are endowed with that by virtue of the fact that you now have a.
Yeah, but for what? Because the Ohio Revised Code doesn't give, if we're talking zoning, the Ohio Revised Code doesn't give the ability to provide zoning through county government. County government doesn't have that power. The municipalities, the townships have that power. County government does not.
I think that there's probably a lot of things that can be locally legislated.
I don't know. Depends on what the charter says and what gets adopted as far as that, and whether or not they want to take over, but I don't know. But
But referendum itself is a break on the legislative enactments that could be performed by the county level legislature.
it's, oh boy, we're really splitting hairs. Today, this General Assembly gives you the right of referendum on certain county acts, but not all of them. And again, it's because it's statutorily, the powers are statutorily given. Like for a sales tax specifically, you have the residents have the right to referendum the imposition of a sales tax if it's done in a couple different ways. There's another way if it's done a certain way where they don't. So it's basically given through again, the whole thing you got to remember here is counties can't do anything unless the General Assembly says, yes, you can do it. You got to go back to the principle of Dillon's rule. You know, you can't just make things up for the county it can do or can't do, because unless the General Assembly has said, county government, you're going to do this, can't do it.
All I can say is if the General Assembly is in the role of parent over local governments, it's time to make the referral to Child Welfare Services.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, let me go to the back here. You're next, yes.
Probably from all of us listening, is this charter thing gonna help us or hurt us?
That's not a value judgment for me to make.
But is it actually gonna help us do anything? Or is it just gonna be changing government?
I would guess the Supreme Court's going to tell you that. If it's adopted and it goes before the Supreme Court will tell you what you got and what you don't got.
And if it's adopted and then something goes to litigation, does this mean that somebody would be able to go ahead and drill the holes and sell the water and everything until the litigation is done? Or would all else be put on hold?
I am sure they would try that. Don't know exactly, but I would guess that a court would basically suspend the imposition during the period of challenge simply because of the significant impact that would occur if you start doing a whole bunch of stuff and then all of a sudden you find out you don't have to do it. But again, that's just me guessing. Yes, ma'am.
The reason for the charter coming into existence was we, and I say we as far as, working about the water, interested in saving our water. We were at an impasse with our local officials, our elected officials. It was like there's no law against it. And that, initiated the, okay, if there's not a law against it, maybe we should look into changing the law. And that's how the charter, it's not meant to restrict, but it's a form of giving us a voice in what's going on in our county as far as what's happening to our natural resource. And as you said, smugly, it's the fracking, it's pipeline, it's big business that all has the say. And I am tired of it. I think we, as our, just our little peons that go along doing our thing, I think it's time we have a voice.
I appreciate that, but I think you said there's nothing the local governments can do, and that's one of the reasons you're frustrated. That goes to the core principle that counties are creatures of statute. The General Assembly hasn't given them the ability to do anything. No, but it is a quagmire. So the General Assembly hasn't given them the ability to do anything. So I don't, you probably can't give them the ability.
Giving them the power to do something.
No, because under Ohio law, a county government and Dillon's rule, go back to Dillon's rule again, you only have the authority of county government to do what the General Assembly allows you to do. And if you're suggesting that there's no local authority now, the General Assembly hasn't given it to you, unless you get it from the General Assembly, you probably don't have the ability to do anything one way or another through county government.
Well, and I'm not suggesting that local government does not do anything, but it is, it's all, everybody's
Yeah.
hands are.
No, you are not suggesting that local government doesn't have the ability to do anything. No, you're not doing that. But the point is, you can only do what the state legislature has given you the power to do. And right now it appears the General Assembly hasn't given county government the power to do anything in this realm. And I don't think that you probably can alter that. Because the Dillon's rule, and you can do county government can came out of an Ohio Supreme Court case years ago, Dillon versus somebody. And it's the general principle of law. Yes, ma'am.
However, if people don't start standing up for themselves, nothing's ever going to change.
Right.
We are still going to be run over by a government that does not perform for us.
I'm not arguing that point. Yeah, I appreciate that. This is a very emotional, very controversial issue, and I think a lot of people are really disappointed that you even find yourself in this spot. No, it's not over. It's probably years and years to go. Yeah.
It's not going to be fun.
I have a question. If there was oil underneath here, they started fracking, would we get mineral rights, get paid for some of that all come out of ground?
There's a severance tax applied across all the jurisdictions that tax that particular location that is paid.
Or would water come under that also? Is water underground?
There currently is that I know of, no state regulation allowing for the assessment of withdrawal of water. It's mineral rights, which are basically water that I don't believe is considered a mineral. I'm not a oil and gas law, mineral rights expert at all. So, yes, sir.
So, whether we adopt the charter or not, we're still stuck with the Ohio Revised Code as our guideline, correct?
I would suggest that's the case, yes.
Like him coming into the house and sucking your beer right out of your refrigerator.
No.
Might be coming? No.
I'm not hearing anything from the state.
Nothing from our legislators or the General Assembly at all?
There's a provision in the state budget bill, I think, which basically says that ecosystems, whatever, don't have any standing in court. There's that provision. It got added by the House, yeah, it got added by the House in the budget bill. The budget bill is currently pending before the Senate. I don't know for a fact who did it. I have a suspicion, but I can't confirm it because I don't know for sure that that was the person that initiated or the group of legislators that initiated.
Is that public record?
The amendment, yeah, the amendment is public record. The amendments were adopted in committee. They might all carry the sponsorship of the House Finance Committee chairman as opposed to individual members.
So are there minutes of the committee meeting?
They are all online. You can go to the ohio.gov website, go to legislature, go to House Finance Committee under the House of Representatives, and all the hearings on House Bill 166, the state budget bill, all the testimonies there and the minutes of the meetings are there.
Well, we're wringing our hands about the charter for the last 30 minutes. In the meantime, AOP is forging ahead. Nothing's going to stop him. He's already said that. And by the way, it's not 19% of the water out of the boundaries of the county. It's 38%. That's if it's only 14 million, because he has to pump twice what he's selling. So, probably not in my lifetime, but there are certainly going to be serious well problems if this forges ahead. And by the time I'm dead, which will be in the next 20 years probably,
Let's hope not.
well, it's coming.
Yeah, to all of us at some point, right? Yeah.
Water, you know, water is going to be affected. It's going to be affected most expeditiously.
One more? Well, wait a minute. I haven't heard. You haven't asked. Yes, go ahead.
My understanding, I want to get something clarified. You mentioned if we go a charter government, have we any authority of stopping the person that's going to sell water? Have we any authority of governing the counties and the states around us? Anything? Because the aquifer, that's what this whole thing's about, this aquifer, protecting it. Our county sits completely over the top of it. So, my question is, can we pass this, can we force the entities around us to abide by it?
I can answer that definitively. Absolutely no.
Thank you, sir.
But when their water goes low, they can't come into our county and pump it right. When they run out of water,
Okay, this has been an informational meeting. The purpose of the meeting was to talk about county charter, how it may affect us. You heard the facts that Mr. Lights laid out.
And opinion, not just facts.
And, at this point in time, we're going to be concluding the meeting. The presentation that you saw today on the PowerPoint will be at the Commissioner's Facebook page. You can go there and download that and listen to it at your convenience. This is an issue that you need to talk to your friends and neighbors and form your opinion. So, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me. I hope it was okay.
Thank you very much for coming.
Sure.